Welcome to our weekly Parsha Shiur. This week, of course, we are studying Parshas Yisro. Parshas Yisro is unique and special in that, among other things, it is, of course, the Parsha of the giving of the Torah, where Hashem came down on Har Sinai, gave the Torah to the Jews, first initially in the form of the Aseret HaDibros, and from there, everything that followed, the Torah that we still have till today, that we still learn, the one that was given by Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai, as articulated in Parshas Yisro. If you have a Chumash in front of you, we're going to study today not the actual Aseret HaDibros themselves, not the actual 10 Commandments themselves, but the pasuk that is right before the Aseret HaDibros and the pasuk that is right after the Aseret HaDibros. So again, if you have the Chumash in front of you, Parshas Yisro, Perak Chof, chapter 20, verse 1. In introducing the Aseret HaDibros, the pasuk says, "Vayedaber Elokim," that Hashem spoke, "Es kol hadvorim ho'ele," all of these words, leimor, and then the Torah goes on to articulate the Aseret HaDibros. The simple meaning of the pasuk, of course, is that with regard to these Aseret HaDibros, they were given by Hashem to the Jewish people directly. Vayedaber Elokim es kol hadvorim ho'ele, Hashem spoke to the Jewish people directly. So whereas with all the other mitzvahs, or as we'll see soon, even the Aseret HaDibros themselves, some of them were given to the Jewish people through Moshe Rabbeinu. The experience of Matan Torah began, at least, with Hashem speaking directly to the Jewish people. Hashem spoke to the Jews. Of course, as the Torah says later, the Jewish people came to Moshe Rabbeinu, they complained, they said the experience is too powerful, we cannot contain it. They said to Moshe, please, Dabar Ato Imanu, please, you speak to Hashem. You tell us what Hashem says. The experience was overwhelming. The Gemara says that it overwhelmed them so that each word that Hashem said, actually their souls expired. And they had to be revived with Tchias HaMesim. And so this is the simple meaning of the pasuk. Hashem spoke all these words to the Jewish people in Mount Sinai, on the 6th day of Sivan. The word in this pasuk, Perak Chav pasuk Aleph, the word that intrigues the commentaries here is the word leimor. Vayedaber Elokim, Hashem spoke, as kol hadvorim ha'ele, and then the Torah adds the word leimor. Now, leimor is a word which appears in Chumash very often. In fact, the word leimor appears in the most common, the most oft-repeated pasuk in the entire Chumash, which is Vayedaber Hashem al Moshe leimor. Hashem spoke to Moshe, and it always says the word leimor. And when we were in school or in Cheder, so the word leimor was always translated as to say, right? Vayedaber or saying. Vayedaber Hashem al Moshe. Hashem spoke to Moshe leimor, saying, or so to say, or something like that. But it's not entirely accurate. It's not entirely accurate. The word leimor doesn't mean saying. The word leimor means to say. And when the pasuk says, Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe leimor, it means that Hashem spoke to Moshe and told these words to Moshe leimor, because Moshe is then supposed to repeat these words to the Jewish people or to others. Or sometimes the pasuk says, Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe ve'el Aaron leimor. Hashem spoke to Moshe and Aaron. And again, the word leimor, once again, tells us that these words should then be repeated to others. In this case, Hashem is speaking to all the Jewish people. Vayedaber Elokim es kol hadvorim ha'ele. Hashem spoke these words again, at least initially at the beginning, when Hashem spoke at Matan Torah. All the Jewish people were present. And in fact, the Gemara says very famously that if one Jew would have been missing, chas v'sholom, Hashem would not have given the Torah to the Jewish people. So if all the Jewish people are there, then what's leimor? Leimor means that these words should be repeated to others, that these words should be given over to others. To whom would these words be needed to be given over to? If all the Jews are present when Hashem says them, if everybody's there while Hashem speaks, then to whom is this leimor for? This is a question that's discussed by the commentaries. In fact, as I'm going to get into right now, it's discussed even by the Medrash itself. The Medrash is intrigued by this. Who is this? To whom is this leimor intended? Who was not present at the giving of the Torah? Who was not present at the giving of the Torah? that the Torah has to tell the people who were present that these words are being told to you, lamer, to then repeat to others. If everybody hears it from Hashem directly, then to whom shall this be repeated? There's a famous Tosfos in Masechta Shabbos. Tosfos says that the only one who wasn't aware, who wasn't present when Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people was the Satan. Only the Satan wasn't there. Tosfos says a very interesting, it's not relevant so much to what I want to talk about today, but I just want to mention it because it's fascinating. Tosfos says that Hashem anticipated, Tosfos in Masechta Shabbos, says that Hashem anticipated that if the Satan would be aware that he's giving the Torah to the Jews, the Satan would say to Hashem, why are you giving the Torah to a people that in 40 days will worship idols? Unbelievable. So the Rabbanu Shloim, Hashem distracted the Satan while he gave the Torah to the Jewish people. So the Satan wasn't aware, but everybody else was aware, which is, the Gemara says, this is the reason why later on, the Satan comes to Hashem and asks Hashem where the Torah is. Where's the Torah? And Tosfos asks, what do you mean? The Satan didn't know where the Torah? What happened to the Torah? Everybody knew. The birds stopped chirping. The whole world stopped. Even the angels were aware. Everybody other than the Satan. So surely lamer over here, when the pasuk says that Hashem spoke to the Jews and he told them these words, lamer, surely lamer here doesn't mean that Hashem wanted them to repeat it to the Satan. And the Satan was the only one who wasn't present. As is well known, even the souls of future generations of Jews were also present. Even the neshamas of future converts were present. Everybody was there when Hashem gave the Torah. So the commentaries, the Medrash talks about this. What is the meaning of this word lamer? So in explaining it, of course, there's two opinions in the Medrash. What does this word lamer mean? Turns out that Matan Torah wasn't a monologue. Matan Torah was a dialogue. It wasn't only Hashem speaking. The Jews also responded. What did the Jews say at the experience of Matan Torah? What did the Jews say? The Jews responded. Every time Hashem gave them a mitzvah, one of the Aseret Hadibros, the Jews had something to say in response. Leave it up to the Jews. They found something to say. What did they say in response? So here in the Medrash, there is an argument between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yishmael says, quote, Shehoyu oimrim al hein hein va'alav lav. Rabbi Yishmael says, for hein they would say hein, and for lav they would say lav. I'll try to explain what that means. The Torah, of course, consists of what we call positive mitzvahs and negative mitzvahs. Even the 10 commandments themselves also contain positive mitzvahs and negative mitzvahs. Positive mitzvahs like keeping Shabbos, positive mitzvahs like honoring your mother and father, negative mitzvahs, don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't be jealous, etc. So Rabbi Yishmael says the Jewish people were engaged in what we call active listening, right? Active listening means you don't just sit there. You get involved in the conversation. So every time Hashem gave the Jews a positive mitzvah, the Jews would shout, hein. Hein means yes. As if to say, yes, we will do what it is that Hashem instructs us. Hashem says, keep Shabbos. All the Jews shouted, hein, yes, we'll keep Shabbos. Hashem said, don't murder. All the Jews shouted, lav, no, we won't commit murder. We won't violate. We won't do what it is that you told us not to do. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael. So again, according to Rabbi Yishmael, this now is the meaning of the word lamer. Hashem spoke these words of the Aseret Hadibros lamer to say, meaning that Hashem wanted the Jews to respond. And they did. The Jews did respond. What did they say? Depends what they were responding to. For positive mitzvahs, they always said, hey, yes, we'll do the mitzvah. And for negative mitzvahs, they all said, lav, no, we won't murder or commit adultery, etc. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Akiva says no. Rabbi Akiva says, al hein hein ve'alav hein. Rabbi Akiva says they responded to all the mitzvahs the same. Positive mitzvahs and negative mitzvahs. Whatever Hashem said, the Jewish people said yes. Hashem said, keep Shabbos. The Jewish people said yes. Hashem said, don't commit murder, don't commit adultery. The Jewish people said yes. What does it mean? Yes. Yes means we'll listen. Whatever it is that Hashem says, that you, Hashem, tell us to do, we'll do. You tell us keep Shabbos, yes, we'll keep Shabbos. You tell us don't commit murder, no, yes, we'll obey and we won't commit murder. So again, according to Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva, the Jews are responding, they're verbally expressing their commitment to fulfill the words of Hashem. How are they saying it? Positive mitzvahs, they're saying, yes, we will. Negative mitzvahs, Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva argue how the Jews responded. Rabbi Yishmael said the Jews said, no, we won't murder, or be jealous, or bear false testimony, or something like that. And Rabbi Akiva says the Jews said, yes, we will. We'll follow your instruction. We'll do whatever it is that you say, and we'll refrain from violating these negative mitzvahs. An argument between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva. All right, it sounds, when you first hear it, it sounds kind of cutesy, the Jewish people are shouting in response. Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva are arguing what it is that they're responding. But as we'll soon see, there's meaning to this. There's significance to this. But before I move on, I just want to repeat that both Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva are explaining the meaning of the word lamer. That when Hashem gave these mitzvahs to the Jews, he gave them to the Jews lamer, meaning that the Jews would respond as Hashem spoke, the Jews would respond appropriately to the words of Hashem, expressing their verbal commitment to fulfill these mitzvahs. Okay. There is, very interestingly, another argument between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva, this time not in the verse right before the Aseres HaDibros, but the first verse right after the Aseres HaDibros. So again, if you have a Chumash in front of you, turn forward a couple of Pesukim to Pasuk Tesvav, Perek Chav Pasuk Tesvav, chapter 20, verse 15. Right after the Torah finishes giving the 10 commandments, the Aseres HaDibros, the Pasuk says like this: B'chol ha'am, Pasuk Tezayin, Pasuk Tesvav, B'chol ha'am, and the whole nation, Royim es hakolos, they saw the sounds, Ves halapidim, and they saw the lightning, Ves koil hashofar, and the sound of the shofar, Ves hahor oshen, and the mountain that was smoking, Vayar ha'am, the people saw, Vayonu'u, and they were moved, Vayamdu me'rochek, and they stood far away from the mountain. Again, on a simple level, the Pasuk is describing the magnitude of the experience of Matan Torah. There was lightning, there were sounds, there was the call of the shofar, the mountain was smoking, etc., etc. But here, again, the Medrash, always sensitive to the exact wording, the nuances of the Pasuk. So here, the Medrash pauses here, picks up on something. What do you mean, asks the Medrash, when the Pasuk says, V'chol ha'am royim es hakolos? The people saw the sounds. You don't see sounds. You hear sounds. Ves halapidim, lapidim is the lightning. Okay, lightning is something that you see, but you don't see sounds. Then the Pasuk says, the shofar, the sound of the shofar. Again, you don't see the sound of the shofar. Then the Pasuk says, Vesahor Oshin, the mountain was smoking. The mountain smoking, that is something that you see. So the Pasuk seems to be going back and forth between sights and sounds. Noises, lightnings, call of the shofar, the mountain was smoking. And yet the Pasuk introduces all of this by saying, V'chol ha'am royim. The people were watching, the people saw. They saw the sounds, they saw the lightning, they saw the sound of the shofar, etc., etc. So what are we to make of this pasuk? What is this supposed to mean? Once again, Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva argue how to interpret this pasuk. Rabbi Yishmael said, Royin hanira v'shoymin hanishma. Royin hanira v'shoymin hanishma means, according to Rabbi Yishmael, it means the pasuk. Rabbi Yishmael interprets the pasuk as being an abbreviated pasuk. Rabbi Yishmael says the pasuk, all right, the pasuk isn't spelling everything out. But the Pasuk is telling us that it was an overwhelming experience. There were sights and there were sounds. The Jewish people saw the sights, they heard the sounds, and it was an overwhelming experience. They were moved, they were physically moved. They moved away from the mountain. According to Rabbi Yishmael, there's nothing miraculous, at least about this part of the way the Jews experienced the sounds and the images and the visions of Matan Torah. They saw the sounds, they saw the sights, and they heard the sounds. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael. Along comes Rabbi Akiva and says, no. That's what the Pasuk says. The pasuk says, "V'chol ha'am royim es hakolos." Royim es hakolos means they saw the sounds. So Rabbi Akiva says, "Royin hanishma, v'shoymin hanira." They saw things that were usually heard, and they heard things that were usually seen. Another one of the many miracles of Matan Torah, according to Rabbi Akiva, was that they saw that which is usually seen. They saw that which is usually heard, according to Rabbi Akiva, and they heard that which is usually seen. Now we have to think for a moment what in heaven's name that even means, but that's what Rabbi Akiva says. Pasuk says, Royim es hakolos means the Jews saw the sounds. Royin hanishma. And just as they saw the sounds, they heard the sights. Rabbi Yishmael says it's not what the pasuk means. The pasuk means there were sights and there were sounds, and they saw the sights and they heard the sounds, as normal, as is usual. Rabbi Akiva says no. The pasuk is to be translated literally. They saw that which is usually heard, and they heard that which is usually seen. Actually, Rashi on the words royim es hakolos said interprets it here like Rabbi Akiva. Royin es hanishma, they saw things which were usually heard. You can't see such a thing. You see lightning and you hear thunder. By Matan Torah, the Jews saw the thunder and heard the lightning. So that the Rashi interprets the pasuk according to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Okay, so just for a couple of moments, let's think about what this means. And let's think about what Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva are really saying. And let's dig a little deeper here, because surely there is significance, surely there is meaning, depth in these discussions. And surely the pasuk right before the Aseret HaDibros and right after the Aseret HaDibros, surely they contain within themselves infinite godly wisdom that's here to guide us and teach us how to approach the Torah, how to study the Torah, and what it is really that is the purpose of the Torah, and what this is all about. Okay, so let's start with this business of hearing, of sights and sounds, seeing and hearing. Okay. So there's a famous expression in Chazal, Eina doime re'iyah l'shmiya, which means you cannot compare hearing something to seeing something. Turns out that seeing something is much more powerful, has much more of a lasting impact, if you will, than hearing something, which is why people say seeing is believing. Right? It's not really true, of course. Seeing is not believing. If you see something, you don't need to believe in it because you already see it. You don't need to believe it if you see it. But what people mean when they say seeing is believing, what they mean is that when you see something, it creates a lasting impact within the person, which has a very powerful impact, which in a way hearing doesn't have. Hearing doesn't necessarily have that kind of an impact. I'll give you a couple of practical examples, or a couple of what this means. What's the strength of seeing over hearing? So you have, for example, in Torah, you have a system called Eidos, right? Eidos means testimony. Testimony means that in order for a bezdin, in order for a Jewish court to rule on a particular issue, they need to hear from two kosher witnesses that something happened, right? They need to hear from two kosher witnesses, Reuven killed Shimon. Reuven was Machal Shabbos, so whatever the case may be. So the Torah tells us that these two witnesses who bear testimony in front of the court, they have to testify about something that they saw. They have to say, when they stand in front of Bezdin, they have to be able to say, this is something that we saw. What if they tell Bezdin, this is not something that we saw, this is something that we heard? But we heard it from somebody we trust. We heard it from an incredibly trustworthy person. We heard it from a trustworthy person that we would trust with our lives. We're so convinced that what this person told us is true that we would be ready to put our lives down on the line because in believing what he says. Wonderful. We don't accept their words as testimony. Torah says you didn't see it, you're not a kosher witness to testify that it happened. But what if I heard about it from somebody that I'd be prepared to swear that he told me is the truth? Maybe it's true. Whether it is true, whether it isn't, either way, it's not valuable as far as testimony is concerned. Testimony is the way it works in halacha. Not with all halachas, but with the big cases. If you want to bear testimony to something, you have to be able to say that you saw it. Okay. Example number one. Another indication of this, where you see this. Imagine somebody shows you a painting, right? Imagine somebody shows you a picture, a photograph, something like that. How long does it take for a person to see a picture, to see a photograph, to see a painting? How long does it take to look at it? Again, I'm not talking about to study it. To study it can take a long time, but just to see it can take an instant. You take a look, boom, now you saw it. Even if after you saw it for one moment, the object is taken away from you, if you were then instructed to go ahead and describe what you saw, it would take you a tremendous amount of time to articulate what it is that you saw in that moment. There's a famous story written in a sefer called Shivchei Ho'ari, stories about the holy Arizal. So his students relate that they once walked into his home. It was Shabbos afternoon, and the Ari was sitting there and he was asleep. They walked and they found him asleep, as is the custom among Jewish people, to take a nap on Shabbos. They found him asleep, but they noticed that his lips were moving while he was sleeping. So one of the students bent over to hear what the Ari was saying in his sleep. They wanted to hear, perhaps there was Kabbalistic ideas or esoteric concepts that he was experiencing while he slept. They heard that he was saying words of Kabbalah. As they bent down to make out, to try to hear what it is that he was really saying, the Ari woke up. And as soon as he woke up, he stopped talking. He saw his students, some of his students were there. So he said to them, "What are you doing?" They said, "Rebbe, we saw your mouth moving. We wanted to be able to hear what it is that you were saying in the realm of Kabbalah while you were asleep." So the Ari said to them, "Believe me, if I had 80 years of teaching you Kabbalah, I wouldn't be able to share with you what I just experienced, the Kabbalistic ideas that I just experienced. How can you dream up? How can you experience in a dream something that can take you 80, that even 80 years is not enough to share?" The answer is that this was something that he was seeing, in a spiritual sense, of course. He was seeing something. Later, if you want to go and describe what it is that you saw, it can take a tremendous amount of time. And yet you absorb it through vision, you absorb it in an instant. Right? Which is why, of course, when everybody knows in the world of PR, in the world of getting a message across, they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. A picture is worth 1,000 words, meaning you can talk about something and people can hear and people can listen and they can even be incredibly empathetic. But once you show it to them and they see it, a picture, a whole different experience. Okay. Now, this is the reason Chachamim explain why we can only see physical things. We can't see spiritual things under normal circumstances. Under normal circumstances, we cannot see spiritual things. I don't only mean godly things, even spiritual things. Sound is more spiritual, it's more subtle. It's more of a refined type of an existence than a physical object. And there, because we are physical human beings, we relate to tangible things in a very real way. We relate to esoteric things, we relate to abstract things in a more distant way. So under normal circumstances, we see physical things. We see tables, we see chairs, we see walls, we see structures. But when it comes to sounds, which are by nature more subtle, more spiritual, more refined, Because these sounds are more distant, therefore we can only hear them. We can't see them. We can't see sounds. They're too subtle in nature. They're too refined. Kumtzugein, Rabbi Akiva, says Rabbi Akiva, and amazing to this. Says Rabbi Akiva, an amazing miracle took place by Matan Torah. Unbelievable. Amazing. You know what happened? The Jewish people saw that which is usually heard, and they heard that which is usually seen. What does Rabbi Akiva mean? They saw the thunder and they heard the lightning. Say, they're a miracle. Why Hashem doesn't make miracles for nothing? What was the purpose of this? What was the intent? What Rabbi Akiva means is that the Jews were elevated at the experience of Matan Torah. They were elevated to a level, to a world in which godliness was tangible. Godliness was real. Godliness was felt like it was a reality in front of them. And the material world was some kind of concept. Royenes hanishma, v'shoymenes hanira means they saw that which is usually heard, and they heard that which is usually seen. So under normal circumstances, a physical human being experiences the physical world in a way that we can see, and experiences the spiritual world in a way that we can hear. Here by Matan Torah, says Rabbi Akiva, it was flipped. It was flipped. Hashem came down onto the mountain and spoke to the Jewish people. Godliness was so real to them. The divine experience was so powerful that they saw, meaning they related in a tangible way to that which is usually seen. Godliness was seen by them. And the materialistic, and that which is usually seen, the materialistic reality that we live in, that became like some kind of concept to them. It was like this idea. It was difficult for them to relate to in a tangible way. There's a famous vort. Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev once complained to the Rabbeinu Shalom. He said, Rabbeinu Shalom, I don't understand what you did. He said, you took Gan Eden and Gehenna and you put it in the books, right? If you want to read about Gan Eden and Gehenna, there's books that describe it. And you put all the temptations of the world, all the pitfalls, all the sins, all the challenges, and you put that in the streets. And you tell the Jews, you have free choice. You can follow what it is that's in a tangible, realistic reality in front of your noses, or you can go read the books and Gan Eden and Gehenna and make choices that way. He says, Rabbi Yitzchak Barditchev says, Rabbeinu Shalom, you called it free choice. He says, if it's free choice, why don't you do the other way around? Why don't you put the Gan Eden and the Gehenna in front of the Jews in the streets? And in the books, you can put in the books over there somewhere in Wikipedia, episodes about taivas and temptations and sins and concepts like this. He says, do that. I challenge you, Rabbeinu Shalom. Do that. Let's see how many Jews sin. Let's see how many Jews, let's see how many Jews are not afraid of Gehenna. How many Jews are not motivated by a lichtige Gan Eden. If that's your version of free choice, then why don't you do that? What the Barditchever was basically saying was, he was saying, look, Hashem, as materialistic, as physical, as corporal human beings, we relate to physicality in a real way. Spirituality is something that we struggle to connect to in a palpable way. It's sort of a distant reality. Says Rabbi Akiva, by Matan Torah, it was switched. The Jews, their frame of reference of existence was flipped the other way around. They saw that which is usually heard. Hashem came down on the mountain and spoke to them. Godliness became an absolute reality to them. Absolute. The materialistic world, weren't 100% sure it even existed in the first place. It was like something that you hear. The Jews were elevated to this level. By the way, this is the way the commentaries explain the meaning of the words of Rabbi Akiva. They saw that which is usually heard, and they heard that which is usually seen. By the way, What this means, according to Rabbi Akiva, is that the Jews at the time, at the experience of Matan Torah, are elevated to a level in which almost like I want to say like angels, in a level, they're elevated to a level where their very reference point of reality shifts, a higher world completely. Based on this, it's relatively easy to understand why the Jews had such a crash landing spiritually 40 days after the giving of the Torah. We'll learn about this, Eretz Hashem, in a couple of weeks when we get to Parsha's Kisisa. 40 days later, they worship the golden calf. And by all accounts, whatever that means, we have to discuss it when we get there. But by all accounts, they had some kind of terrible spiritual falling. And you wonder to yourself, well, how could Jews who just 40 days beforehand experienced such a powerful revelation of godliness, the giving of the Torah itself, they heard Hashem come down the mountain and say, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. How can people who experienced that 40 days later worship the golden calf? How's that possible? It's one of the most puzzling, one of the most difficult to understand stories in the whole Torah. It's going to be unbelievable. Unbelievable story. Literally unbelievable. There are many, many explanations and many angles and many aspects to it. The Gemara says that the whole thing was set up by Hashem. Whatever, we'll get to that in a few weeks. But for now, what I want to say is when you think about what Rabbi Akiva is saying, the type of world the Jews were elevated to at the time of the giving of the Torah, where their very definition of reality changes, what's considered to the Jews a tangible reality shifts. They move into a higher plane. The very fabric of existence, it's like the very fabric of existence changes. So because they were in such a different place at the time of the giving of the Torah, it's relatively easy to understand that when the experience is over and the Jews revert back to their ordinary, regular, material, physical experience and way of life, it's relatively easy to understand that it was too difficult for them to hold on to that they saw, that they experienced by Matan Torah and bring it into everyday life because the contrast was too sharp. It was like for example, we say Avraham Avinu, right, discovered the existence of Hashem as a young child. How did he do it? He looked around the world and he said, all of these things, all of this existence couldn't have created itself. It had to have come from a creator. And the creator has to be bigger, and the creator has to be not limited by any of the limitations of the world, etc., etc. Okay. Avraham Avinu discovers Hikiras Boirei. Avraham Avinu discovers that there is a creator, that there is a Boirei Olam, someone who creates the world. Okay, understood. But Avraham Avinu comes to that recognition by studying the world. In other words, the world exists. Since the world exists, it must have some form of a creator. What that story itself tells you, that even Avraham Avinu, who was the first one to discover Hashem, even Avraham Avinu, his frame of reference, his starting point is the acceptance of corporal, material, physical existence, materialistic existence. And from there, he extrapolates, there must be a buyer, there must be a creator who created all of this, which again, to one degree or another, this is the frame of reference of reality that we all exist in. Says Rabbi Akiva, but when Hashem gave the Jewish people the Torah, they were put into a world, into Hashem's world, where the reality of godliness is more real and more apparent and more tangible and more in front of you, more direct than any physical existence. It's no wonder, by the way, when you hear this, that the Jews literally left their bodies, their souls left their bodies when they experienced this. It wasn't something they could experience as human beings, physical human beings. So of course, once they revert back to their normal life, it's very difficult, if at all possible, to retain the impact of that type of experience of Matan Torah. Rabbi Akiva says it was like an out-of-body experience. They moved into a higher realm of existence altogether. This is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Okay? It's clear that Rabbi Akiva wants us to see the giving of the Torah, wants us to see the experience of the giving of the Torah as a very godly, very divine experience. Beautiful. Along comes Rabbi Yishmael and says, no, that's not what happened. In fact, says Rabbi Yishmael, there was nothing miraculous about this experience, about this part of the experience at all. They didn't see sounds, and they didn't hear sights. They saw sights and they heard sounds. Everything continued functioning as normal. Why does Rabbi Yishmael insist? What's behind the philosophy of Rabbi Yishmael that this part wasn't miraculous? What's wrong with what Rabbi Akiva is saying? Rabbi Akiva insists that the Jews were elevated to a higher frame of reality, to a higher world. Says Rabbi Yishmael, no, they were not. They remained materialistic, mundane human beings with no doubt with a divine experience, giving them Matan Torah, of course, but their frame of reference never changed. Why? Why does Rabbi Yishmael argue? Because Rabbi Yishmael says the purpose of the giving of the Torah was not for us to be elevated to the level of angels. It was not for us to experience Hashem on the level of that is an out of body experience. No. According to Rabbi Yishmael, the purpose of the experience of Matan Torah was that Hashem spoke to Jews even as Jews remained physical human beings in touch with their materialism, and Jews to whom, human beings to whom, materialism, physical reality is a natural first reality. Meaning to say, Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva are arguing, what is the purpose of Matan Torah? Or in general terms, what is the general purpose of the Torah? There's two ways of looking at it. I think if you stopped an average Yid on the street and asked them this question, you would get different opinions from different Jews. What is the purpose of why did Hashem give the Torah to the Jews? Why do we study Torah? Why do we fulfill this? Because Hashem wants us to, of course. But what is it intended to accomplish? There are two perspectives here. We're going to, as far as today's discussion is concerned, we're going to call it the Rabbi Akiva perspective and the Rabbi Yishmael perspective. Rabbi Akiva's perspective is that we, as human beings, as Yidden who've been given the Torah, who merited that Hashem spoke to us and told us, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, we have to try to liberate ourselves and extract ourselves from this materialism, from the physical constraints in which we find ourselves. Rabbi Akiva says there's a godly reality, there's a godly world, there's a godly existence. There are things which we can only relate to under normal circumstances. We can only relate to it in a very distant way. But hopefully if you study Torah and if you fulfill mitzvahs, or if you experience the very giving of the Torah, hopefully if you do your avodah, you can elevate yourself. One can elevate themselves and make them more spiritual. We can make ourselves less connected, less invested in the physical realities and the physical limitations of the world. Perhaps, as Rabbi Akiva, if we invest ourselves deep enough and intensely enough, perhaps we can graduate from some of the physical restraints that hold us back the whole time. Perhaps we can set ourselves free and let loose in the divine. Perhaps we can feel a connection to Hashem that we can't experience on a regular basis if we daven, if we learn, if we elevate and refine ourselves. Says Rabbi Akiva, if we work on ourselves hard enough, we can touch something that's not ordinary, that's not simple. We can experience a connection to Hashem in a way that is magical. According to Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Akiva looked around at the world he was in. Rabbi Akiva said, this physical, materialistic world, materialism, the physical, it's not a dwelling place truly for a Jew. It's not spirituality, divinity, godliness is not comfortable here. This is a selfish world. Barely recognizes Hashem. If that, let's get out of here, said Rabbi Akiva, as much as we can. That's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Says Rabbi Yishmael, my dear friend, that's not the point. And if God wanted us all to be angels, he would have made us all angels. Instead, the purpose is not to elevate, according to Rabbi Yishmael, not to elevate the people out of the physical and liberate them into the spiritual, into the divine, and remove them from the world. But quite the opposite. Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai, the purpose is to take the godliness that we experience at Har Sinai, to take the Torah that we learn, the mitzvahs that we do, and to bring it wherever permissible according to Torah, and wherever possible, to inculcate it and to push it into the physical world, as much as one can. The purpose of studying Torah and fulfilling mitzvahs, says Rabbi Yishmael, is to be earthbound, feet in the ground people, Jews, who can bring God's reality and the reality of Torah into a world in which materialism is taken for granted. That the world, the physical, materialistic world that is fraught with arrogance and ego and temptation and even the possibility of sin, to take the godliness and to put it into all of that. That's really the purpose, says Rabbi Yishmael, of Matan Torah. And so when Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people, says Rabbi Yishmael, they were not elevated to a level where they saw things which are usually heard and they heard things which are usually seen. That would have been the opposite of the purpose of Matan Torah. Hashem could, if that's what Hashem wanted, he could have given the Torah to the Malachim. Instead, Hashem gave it to physical human beings so that these physical human beings could take the Torah and bring it into a physical world. Right? Stop an average Yid in the street. Ask them, what is the purpose of the Torah? For us to be less worldly or for us to be more worldly? if they understand the question, you'll get to two schools of thought. Right? There are those Jews who say, the less we have to do with the world, the better. The more we can close our eyes and focus on our connection to Hashem, the more holy and spiritual, the more connected to Hashem we'll be. And there are others who say that's not what Hashem wants. Hashem wants us to be here, and Hashem wants us to take the Torah mitzvahs and bring it into the physical world. Now, who's right? Who's right? Of course, they're both right, which is why both opinions are recorded in the Medrash. And they're both right at times. At sometimes supposed to do this, sometimes supposed to do that. And different people have different missions in this world. Different people have different they have different mandates in this world of what it is that they're meant to accomplish. Some are meant to be in, some are meant to be out. Rabbi Yishmael, the Gemara says, was a Kohen Gadol, right? The Kohen Gadol's job is to bring godliness into the world. Rabbi Akiva, on the other hand, was Ben Gerim, right? So he was headed in the opposite direction. Everybody has their own journey. They have to, or in fact, it says actually that Rabbi Akiva, very interesting. Rabbi Akiva, when Rabbi Akiva passed, Rahman al-Islan, he was murdered by the Romans. The Romans, he was one of the 10 martyrs. They murdered him in a very brutal way. So the Gemara says when Rabbi Akiva, listen to this, the Gemara says when Rabbi Akiva died, as he was being murdered, as he was being butchered to death, The Romans murdered him in front of his students. And as he was dying, the students saw in him a tremendous simcha. They saw in him a tremendous happiness. As he was saying Shema Yisrael and dying. And his students said to him, "What is this? Ad kadei kach?" So Rabbi Akiva said to his students, my whole life, I always said Shema Yisrael. Every day, I said Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, it says, you have to love Hashem with your whole heart, b'chol levavcha, with b'chol nafshecha, with your whole soul. Which means that one has to be ready to die for the sake of Kiddush Hashem, for the sake of the belief in Hashem. Rabbi Akiva said, and I always, every time I read the Shema, I was in pain. And I was asking myself, when am I going to have the opportunity to fulfill this mitzvah? Mosa yovei liyodi v'akaimenu, to be able to fulfill this mitzvah of dying al Kiddush Hashem. And now it's finally here. It brought him joy. In other words, Rabbi Akiva's whole life was a Mesiras Nefesh life. He was yearning and craving to leave the constraints of his physical body, to leave the constraints of this physical world, and for the neshama to connect to Hashem in a way that was completely unrestrained. This was the she'ifa, sachayim. This was everything Rabbi Akiva ever wanted. Give me a connection to Hashem that's not limited and that's not held back and that's that's not constrained in any way. The rabbis like to say that the reason why people shackle, they move back and forth while they study, while they daven, is because the neshama is like a candle. Like a candle flickers, it's trying to break free. Rabbi Akiva's neshama was trying to break free. Rabbi Akiva says everybody's neshama is trying to break free. Mesiras Nefesh is that moment, is that ability where the neshama can finally leave the body and become one with Hashem in the most spiritually powerful way. That's what happened in Matan Torah, says Rabbi Akiva. The Jews moved into a higher form of reality. Says Rabbi Yishmael, says Rabbi Yishmael, no, that's not the purpose of the Torah. The purpose of the Torah is that a Jew should put his 2 feet firmly on the ground and should not only not run away from the materialistic reality, from the materialistic frame of reference of reality, but should look for a way to bring Hashem's presence into this physical world as much as possible, wherever permissible. Now let's go back. We started off by saying that Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva argue, how did the Jews respond when Hashem gave them the Aseret HaDibros? Hashem gave them positive mitzvahs, the Jews said, hey. Hashem gave them negative mitzvahs. What did the Jews say? Did the Jews say, lav, no? Rabbi Yishmael said, the Jews said, lav, no. We won't violate these mitzvahs. Rabbi Akiva said, hey, we will fulfill these mitzvahs. What's to make a difference? Either way, the Jews are expressing their verbal consent to do what it is that Hashem wants. But it's very, very different. It's very different. You see, every mitzvah has 2 parts. Every mitzvah has 2 parts. Let's take, for example, the mitzvah of keeping Shabbos, one of the mitzvahs in this week's Parsha. The mitzvah of keeping Shabbos has 2 parts. One part is the details of the mitzvah, the specifics. Don't do malacha, make kiddush, make havdalah, make kiddush at the beginning of Shabbos, make havdalah at the end of Shabbos. The specifics of the mitzvah, the details of that particular mitzvah. Another aspect of the mitzvah is that this mitzvah is the will of Hashem. The fact that the mitzvah has specific details, that is different in every mitzvah. The details of every mitzvah are different from every other mitzvah. Every pasuk in every halacha in Torah is different from the other halacha in Torah. On the other hand, the fact that this mitzvah is the will of Hashem, the fact that this pasuk is the will of Hashem, the fact that this halacha is the word of Hashem, that's the same in all 613 mitzvahs. The reason aren't some mitzvahs which are more the will of Hashem and other mitzvahs less the will of Hashem. All the mitzvahs are the will of Hashem. And every aspect, every part of Torah is the will of Hashem. So now you have again the same dichotomy, the same 2 perspectives. Which part is the most important part of a mitzvah? Is it the details of the mitzvah? Is it the specifics of the mitzvah? Is it the particular halachas relevant to this mitzvah? Or is it the aspect of the mitzvah that this is the will of Hashem? So again, you have the two perspectives. Rabbi Akiva says the details of the mitzvah are important. The specifics of the mitzvah are important. What it is that this mitzvah asks of me to do, these details are important. Why? Because through these details, I can get to the point. What's the point? The point is the will of Hashem. The will of Hashem transcends everything. The will of Hashem is the same in all mitzvahs. The will of Hashem is not bound by this particular mitzvah. The will of Hashem is infinite. Rabbi Akiva said, fulfill the specifics of the mitzvah so that you can experience, so that you can be makayim, the will of Hashem, so that you can connect to a Hashem who gives the mitzvah. The most important part of a mitzvah, says Rabbi Akiva, in all mitzvahs is the same. That's why, according to Rabbi Akiva, when the Jews responded to the Aser Dibros, they found a word which they could use in all mitzvahs the same. Whether Hashem gave them a negative mitzvah, whether Hashem gave them a positive mitzvah, either way, the Jews said yes. What's yes? Yes, we'll do what Hashem says. What it is that Hashem is saying specifically, okay, whatever it is that Hashem says, we'll do. Ki Shabbos, kosher is kosher, don't kill, don't steal, whatever it is. Not that it's not important. Of course it's important, but it's not as important. It's not as important as what? It's not as important as the fact that this is a mitzvah that Hashem gave us. Rabbi Akiva says they found the same answer to give to all the mitzvahs because it was not the details of the mitzvah which they saw as being the purpose, ultimately. It was the Rabbeinu Shalom who had given them the mitzvahs. The godliness inside the mitzvahs that they wanted to connect to in an outer worldly way. Once again, Rabbi Yishmael says, no, that's not the tachlis. Rabbi Yishmael says it's not the purpose. You know what the purpose is? The purpose is, yes, it's true, says Rabbi Yishmael, every mitzvah is the will of Hashem. But the purpose is that one should find within every single mitzvah the details, the specifics, and what it is that Hashem wants me to do here in this place, the specific details of the mitzvah which are different in every mitzvah. That's the most important part. According to Rabbi Yishmael, when Hashem gave the Jewish people a mitzvah, the Jewish people were already conscious, they were already thinking, how are we going to do this mitzvah? What are the specifics? What are the shiurim? What's the size? What's the length, etc.? And when they responded to Hashem, they responded to the specific instruction that Hashem had given. Hashem said, don't kill. The Jews said, no, we're not going to kill. Of course, they're going to fulfill this mitzvah because Hashem told them to. But as they fulfill the mitzvah that Hashem gave them, they're conscious of the fact that Hashem is asking them to invest themselves within the framework and the reality in which for which these mitzvahs are intended. It's two perspectives on Matan Torah, but of course, I'm assuming at this point it should be clear to all of us that these are two perspectives, these are two angles in every time we study Torah and every time we do a mitzvah. Both are true. On the one hand, we want to use every aspect of Torah to connect to a divinity which is beyond Torah. On the other hand, we also want to take from the Torah insights and directives and strength to deal with every particular challenge and every particular situation in life that we deal with. Of course, the Torah gives us both. For most of us who are, shall we say, on a simpler spiritual perspective, the path of Rabbi Yishmael teaches us that the Torah that Hashem gave us is here to guide us in every aspect and in every detail of life. And while for most of us, we cannot escape, right? Maybe sometimes we'd like to, but we cannot escape the harsh realities of life. The message of Rabbi Yishmael is here to remind us and to teach us that Hashem's wisdom is here to guide us. The mitzvahs are here to instruct us and to be with us. Every nuance as we go through every turn and every element and every challenge and everything that we deal with in life and in this world. May Hashem bless us that we have a Kabbalah HaTorah, a true receiving of the Torah, that we live a Torah life, that we continue to study it, please God, together for many years in health and happiness and success. Please God, we should be We should experience the coming of Mashiach. We'll have Moshe Rabbeinu back with us. Will teach us Torah, just as he did thousands of years ago. May it happen speedily in our days. Have a wonderful Shabbos.